Okay, so I have two Overrun drums here, 480 Overrun drums, and I'm going through these because I noticed that this one is actually missing a tooth. I started to take this thing apart. I took the clutch pack out, actually, and found that little tooth in there, and it was actually stuck right on the back of this first steel. It was wedged in between the piston and the steel, and luckily it just broke off, fell down, and then got wedged in there, and it looks like it just kind of stayed there. Didn't cause any other damage, which is good, but now I can't use that drum, so I went to my other kind of parts transmission now and pulled this one out of it. And I know they're different years because this one has the later Sprague in it with the blue pieces, and this is the early one. I want to say this year started in like 2000 or 2001. So I was just kind of going through just for my own understanding and looking at what the differences are in the drum, and can you swap these things back and forth? Can you swap the Spragues? Are the pistons the same? All that stuff. So the pistons are the same. Obviously the Spragues are different, but if you look at this one, you can see this spring pack has this little bubble all the way around it, where this spring pack doesn't have that. The Sprague ramp is a little bit different also. This one kind of just has a shorter flat spot on it. Then this one over here, you can also see that this tooth for the Sprague is all the way to the bottom where the snap ring is, whereas the later style doesn't go all the way down to the snap ring. So on the later style, it doesn't go all the way down to the snap ring. You can see on the Sprague that there's actually a little bit of a groove that sits in. So that makes it so this Sprague doesn't actually pull out of here. It's like locked in this position. I'm trying to pull up on it, but if I twist it a little bit, I can pull up. And then if I turn it, it locks in and doesn't want to come out. So it does have that little groove on the bottom that allows the Sprague to lock into it, doesn't pull out. Older style Sprague has this big lip all the way around the bottom, doesn't have the blue inserts. But then this one can kind of pull up and around in every position. So I don't know if that was one of the reasons for that change, is it just kind of locks it into position a little bit better, but this one does not do that. So then the next question becomes the physical diameter of the Sprague. So can you reuse these or swap the overdrive planetary set, which you can't. So, well, before we do it with the caliper, you can physically see the later style has a bigger lip all the way around here. Compare it to this one. You can see that flat edge is actually smaller. So you can see that they're physically different, the inner diameter. So just measuring from the inner diameter to the outer inside the lug, that one's at 0.637. And then this is the early style, measuring it the same way, here at 0.533. So on the early style, you have a bigger inner diameter because the Sprague on this one is physically bigger. So that should help strengthen that up a little bit. But then the question becomes, can you swap these? So let's take the correct fitment. We'll put these together. There we go. Put the early one on. Alright. Okay, so they look very similar just sitting like this, and pay attention to how they rotate. So they kind of make that little squealing sound, and then they lock real nice. There's not a lot of play in it. When I spin back, it immediately locks. This one is the same way. So now let's take these apart once. And what would happen, let's say if I took the early Sprague and I put it on a late drum. Alright, so it falls on. It actually goes on there like that. And it does lock the early Sprague on the late drum. But you hear that knocking in there. So this actually rotates, and then there's a little bit of play before it locks. So you can hear that knocking in there. So that would actually shock that thing. So you might be able to get away with using that for a little while, but it would probably not be very happy. So then the other way, putting the late on the early one. This one I can't even get it to go on there. Alright, so before we switched the Sprague and the planetary set. So what would happen if you had the right Sprague and the wrong planetary set? Alright, so that's the correct Sprague with the wrong planetary set. So this one doesn't even lock. So remember, this one has a larger Sprague. So this planetary set has a larger inner diameter, so it just doesn't even lock on the Sprague. So now, if we switch over here, this one has the smaller inner diameter, so I'm sure you can probably guess, this one just doesn't even fall down. You can't even get it on. So that's kind of that, so hopefully that should help you be able to identify. I know it helps me. That's kind of why I wanted to go through this, more for my own knowledge and then just documenting it. Because it's not very often that you get multiple parts side by side and you get to actually look at them and see the differences. So hopefully that helps. What I'm going to be doing with this one, because this tooth is broken off, I'm going to be going with the old style. And that fits on there nicely. I was using this transmission before, so I'm not really too worried about not having the good Sprague or whatever, because I was using this one before and I went 10.7 in a 4,400 pound truck with this transmission. So that's what I'm going to use. Now I will just throw the new clutches and steels in it. Just got these guys right here, so just some new choline steels with Borg-Warner clutches. That's what's going to be going back in. Right, and just for good measure, we have the ATSG manual for all of the stuff that we were just talking about. Previous design, current design. So it just shows a picture of the Sprague differences. It does annotate the different ramp angle on the inner cam. So there, if you look at the ramp angle, it comes up a little bit steeper, has more flat on it. This one kind of has a longer ramp with a shorter flat on it. Here it's showing basically the differences with the spring pack, and that's that little ridge I was talking about. The snap rings are actually a different thickness. This one's saying that it doesn't have that recessed edge all the way around. This one does have the recess. So that would be like this little section right here. It bubbles up and then it's recessed in. And then it does have a little larger area for a snap ring groove. And like I said, the teeth are actually shorter on that, so the Sprague will lock into it. And then there's just showing the measurements on the different inner diameter for the Sprague inner race.